Hi, everyone. Welcome to our homeroom live stream. Sal here from Khan Academy. Before we get into our guest, who is me today, it's just going to be an Ask Me Anything type of thing. So actually start putting your questions on Facebook and YouTube, and we have team members who will surface them to me, and you can ask literally about anything. I will give my standard announcement, reminder that Khan Academy is a not-for-profit organization. We're funded through philanthropic donations. Special shout out to several corporations that have stepped up, and especially as our costs went up due to COVID. Special thanks to Bank of America, Google.org, AT&T, Fastly, and Novartis. But even with that support, we were already running at a deficit pre-COVID crisis, and that deficit has accelerated because of our increased costs as our server load has gone up. And we're trying to do more programs, more content. So first, thanks for those who have stepped up, especially those corporations. Thank you for all of you who've donated. But if you're in a position to do so, please think about donating to Khan Academy. We only exist because of philanthropic donations from folks like yourself. So with that said, I am eager to answer your questions about anything. And let's see what questions are coming in. I'll just wait around a little bit. I will say, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, yesterday's conversation with David Sinclair, as y'all know, I've been following David for many years. And I think I made him feel a little awkward when I was because obviously he talks about life extension and he looks eerily young. But when he told me that getting winded helps you with your health, I went for an extra fast run this morning on an empty stomach, because he also said that, once again, if you're a growing kid, eat your regular meals. Don't listen to anything from me. Even if you're a fully grown person, don't take any health, nutrition, or medical advice from me. But the intermittent fasting does seem to, at least in my head, kind of work. So that was an interesting takeaway. It was very tangible life advice that we got from David yesterday. So I'm eager to get more questions, and am I in the right doc? I'm not seeing any questions here showing up. Or maybe people are just, maybe we've answered everyone's questions. That's an interesting thing to ponder, that there's no questions left. Let's see. Yeah, I'm in the doc and I don't see any questions. Let's see, are you there? Sure people are on the same we're on the same doc with some of our team members. Felipe, am I in the right doc? I just typed in it because I don't see anything coming up. Oh, there we go. We have some questions coming up. So from Facebook, Luis Vega says, can Khan Academy reduce the risk of infection to our children around the world? Luis, that was quite a question that we got to start our AMA here. So it depends on what layer you're talking about. Obviously, I don't think Khan Academy is going to prevent the infection, but if in many parts of the world school closures are continuing, or there's some type of hybrid learning where kids are going to have to learn from home online, and that's obviously a place where Khan Academy can help keep the learning happening while there are school closures, because and the school closures are there obviously to keep families and keep everyone from getting sick. So I think that's Khan Academy's primary role here. So we have a very real, legitimate role during these school closures. We've talked about it before. Our traffic has gone up almost by a factor of 3 when schools are open. I suspect it's going to only accelerate as we get back into school season. And then I guess there's another layer of, an education layer that we play, whether it's, this type of conversation, bringing guests on who could speak to the virus. We had Bill Gates on several months ago. We're actually going to have several other experts on health and vaccination in the coming weeks. So that's another role we can play. And obviously we can teach people about biology, about exponential growth, and that could hopefully inform. But I think our biggest role in the immediate now is, how do we keep people learning? How do we support students, parents, and teachers during these very hard times for schools because of what's going on? So from Facebook, Sadia Ijaz says, tips to make online teaching more interesting. So great question. And I think there's two types of online teaching, at least two. Maybe there's more than two. There's what I would call asynchronous online teaching, and then there's synchronous online teaching. Asynchronous online teaching is for the most part what Khan Academy does. Students can go at their own time and pace. They can get as much practice. They get feedback. There's game mechanics for them. And then if they need supports, there's hints and there's videos. And if you were thinking about these videos, which are asynchronous, I'm obviously not giving the lesson at the exact moment that a student is watching the lesson. There, I think it's very important for whoever's the content creator to feel genuinely passionate about what they are talking about, to have a deep, not just interest in it, but a deep understanding of it. Because I think if those two things aren't true when you're giving the lesson, then I think as human beings, we're very sensitive to tone, and we know that, like, hey, this person isn't excited about it. Why should I be excited about it? I would say another thing, and I'm not saying you cannot make a great piece of content if it's scripted, but once again, human beings, students, we're very sensitive to tone, and you usually can tell the difference if someone is reading a script versus if someone is actually speaking from their mind. And when you speak from your mind, you might say a few more ums, you might pause or stutter a little bit, but I actually think it's a good trade-off because people know you're a human being and you are just trying to make transparent the thought process. So I definitely try to do that when I make my videos. Many of y'all know I do them somewhat, I look at what the standards are, what I need to cover. Sometimes I'll prepare some visuals or some graphics or some charts, some example problems. But when I do it, I'm there. I'm there in real time in the same headspace as the student while I'm recording the video. If you're doing a synchronous online lesson, so let's say you're doing it over Zoom or Hangouts or something like some type of video conferencing, there I think, well, actually some of the same things apply where, try to have interest in it, try to have passion for it. I actually would say this would also apply in a physical classroom, but I think it's that much more important if you're on something like Zoom or video conferencing to keep it as interactive as possible. So it should not be the teacher or you just lecturing to students for half an hour or for 30 minutes or for however long that video conference session is. The more it can be like, hey, here's an interesting idea, maybe a couple of minutes of background or context, and say, okay, now I want all of y'all to figure out something, whatever subject it is. And obviously in some of these video conferencing tools, you can put kids into breakouts. I think that is actually the best thing to do for the synchronous, because you're really leveraging the fact that live human beings are connecting at least virtually in the moment. So if I was running a Zoom session, I would say, well, if I were doing both, if I were a teacher who's having to keep kids learning while COVID's going on and schools are physically closed, I would say use Khan Academy, depending on your age, someplace between 30 and 60 minutes a day to make sure that you get all of your core skills and content, that you keep developing that, and that several times a week, maybe 3 times a week, we'll get on video conference for 45 minutes. And the way that I would run those video conferences is at least 2 of them a week. I would have the students, I would give them some context, but then I would give them a challenging series of problems, and maybe ones that would be challenging for different levels of students. And then I would ask the students to go into breakouts and in small groups try to work through it. Or maybe first I'll say, hey, everyone try to do it themselves, come up with a solution, and then put them into breakouts and try to explain their solutions to each other, and then come back and then talk about it. If I'm in a humanities class, I would put some interesting issue on the table as to, you are Julius Caesar, would you cross the Rubicon? And then let the kids vote, then let them go into breakouts, let them debate with each other in kind of Julius Caesar's head as to whether they should cross the Rubicon or not, and then come back, and then people kind of debrief. I think that type of interaction will keep it as human as possible in this online world. And frankly, everything I just said about online, I think, is also in a lot of ways optimal for the physical world as well. So from Facebook, Selena Chang says, Sal, when and how do you structure your daily schedule? So there's 2 different things that Selena might be referring to. She might be referring to, we have issued a daily, right when COVID hit, that that was back in March, feels like a lifetime ago. We said, look, parents are going to need help structuring their days. Right now people are saying, here's a bunch of links, make use of it. And we said parents need help knowing how to structure their students' days so that they can cover the material, have time for breaks, for play, for lunch, whatever else. So we publish daily schedules. The way that was created was myself and several team members, we said, okay, let's put all of this together. Like, what are the must-haves in a school day, or in a homeschooling day, or in a quarantine schooling day? How do you make sure you have enough breaks? How do you make sure that you have enough free time outside, but also that you're covering all your key subjects? And then we've been refining that ever since, based on feedback from parents and students and teachers and education researchers around the world. If Selena is asking, how do I schedule my day? There's a couple of things. So I've said it multiple times on this live stream, I like to start with some wins. So I always, I would say 90% of days, I will, get out of bed and I will do a meditation for 20 to 30, sometimes 40 minutes. Then I try to do some physical exercise, which I try to actually do a couple of handstand push-ups. Then I go running as fast as I can for about a mile. Then I make my bed. And sometimes, I make my bed, then I kind of do my classic brush your teeth, etc. stuff, and then I'm into my day. And my ideal day is that my mornings is when I'm fresh, where my brain can handle the most cognitive load. And so that's when I try to do content creation, because content creation does take a lot of cognitive load. It's one thing to do a math problem or to explain some concept in physics or the humanities. It's another thing to do it while you're speaking out loud and being recorded and writing on a screen. So I try to make sure that my brain is very fresh for that. And then my middle of the day, I kind of have a lot of meetings. Khan Academy, we have over 200 folks, engineers, product designers, product managers, fundraising. It's relative to where it started, it's a reasonably complex organization now. And so, wherever I can help support folks do the important work they're doing, that's kind of my middle of the day. I'm also talking a lot to, right before this, I got off the phone with a philanthropist, explaining how we're running at a deficit and that we need their support. In the middle of the day, I do a lot of, obviously I do the press whenever they need me, because that just helps build awareness that we have this tool out there. So, yesterday I had to wake up at 5 in the morning for Fox Business because it was on the East Coast. So, do what it takes to spread the word. But in my ideal day, I would then, by the afternoon, hopefully I'm just trying to finish up all my odds and ends. And I just got a message that I have something on the top of my head. It does look like I do. And I couldn't see it because it was this little, oh yeah. Oh, there you go. There we go. It's just a little white piece of paper or something. Let's see, from Facebook, Suraj Dadse says, is data science really a course for a top-notch job? I would say, yeah. Data science is a really good skill to have, I would say, in almost any field you go to. And, data science is funny. I spoke at I forgot what they call it, it's like the National Actuarial Society. And for those of you who don't know what an actuary is, an actuary, and the job of an actuary has existed for many, at least decades, probably, maybe even a century, and frankly, as long as things like insurance have existed, actually. So that's probably many centuries. But they're the folks who look at the data of, like, what's the probability that, a father of 3 who's 43 years old, who drives a Honda Accord, will get into a car accident, and then how much would that car accident cost on average, and then based on that, what should their car insurance be so that it's profitable for the insurance, but also something that is reasonable for the father of 3, which I've just described myself. So that job is inherently data science. They're looking at large data sets and coming up with insights of it in order to make kind of business decisions. So statistics, statisticians, actuaries have always been doing data science. Now with this notion of big data, and you can imagine even a Khan Academy, we have tens of millions of people doing exercises. Can we use that data in ways that is constructive? And we're very careful. We would never want to use the data. We're a nonprofit. We would never want to use it in shady ways. But can we use it in ways that is used? Can it improve the learning? Can do better personalization? Can we learn insights that maybe certain types of concepts are easier learned for certain types of students in one way versus another way? And so it's kind of taking that same lens of statistics and what actuaries do, but with a little bit of coding and computer programming, to be able to query these large data sets and know how to structure these large data sets and how to actually come with, real insights from them. And that's going on in pretty much every industry in the world. So yes, simple answer is, if it interests you, I think it's a great thing. And I think even if you don't want to become a data scientist, I think it's really valuable to become reasonably familiar with it, because in pretty much any function, you're going to be asking these types of questions. And maybe there's an analytics or a data science group that does some of the work, but you need to be informed in order to know how to structure the questions correctly, or to know what that information is telling you or not telling you. So yeah, it's a good career if it's of interest to you. So from Facebook, Kunza Tariq says, how to deal with ADHD children these days for online classes. Are there any tips for them? So Kunza, I'm not an expert, so I'm definitely not don't take everything I say with a super grain of salt. What we've told all parents, and I think my gut sense, my intuitive sense is that this might be valuable for students with ADHD, is, start simple and build a habit. So let's say math or school in general. If your child's school is closed and you're doing this quarantine schooling, you don't have to replicate all of school all at once. That'll be overwhelming for you. That'll be overwhelming for your child. What I would say is do even 20 minutes a day. And if attention span is an issue, a 15-minute session, a 10-minute session, sit next to them and work. And I don't know how old they are, but work through. If they're able to do 15 minutes a day on Khan Academy, maybe first thing in the morning, and then create that habit, then they're going to progress. And then if that feels like that's firm footing, that habit, then you could then build on top of that. So that's my best advice, is to start small and really focus on building habits versus trying to, boil the ocean all at once. So from Facebook, John Bernard Horn says, Sal, how can we all help people steer clear of questionable conspiracy theories, specifically regards to COVID, SARS-2? Yeah, I think the best way to steer clear of conspiracy theories is to just, be well informed about things, have good critical thinking skills, and, talk to people you might not agree with, get their points of view. I will say that before Khan Academy and this Khan Academy experience, you see, you read a lot about what goes on in the world, and it is sometimes tempting. And this was even before social media, where your friend says, well, I'm not sure if that's what really happened. I think that person did it so that this would happen because they benefited from it. And one thing is that in my Khan Academy experience, I've had the luxury of meeting some of these actors, some of these world leaders, or some of these CEOs, or some of these people with a lot of resources. And I have to say, when you kind of meet them and they're not, they don't have to be on, and they're just kind of being human beings, I've become much more skeptical of conspiracy theories because I realize that most people are just like trying to make it through the day. And, you might think that, and maybe what I'm about to say is scary, that, some of these intelligence agencies and that they have these like magical pieces of information, all that, but they're running off of, sometimes they find out about stuff from the news. I've become even more skeptical of conspiracy theories. But what I say is always use critical thinking skills. And look, I would say most of the time, your critical thinking skills will tell you that the conspiracy theories are not likely true. But every now and then, maybe the mainstream view isn't true. But that's where your critical thinking skills are going to be really, really valuable, because I think it is always interesting. I read a lot of books, and I like these plot twists where there's like a surprise, like, oh, you thought it was this, but it's actually that. And you say, oh, well, of course, yeah, party B was the beneficiary. So even though they look like the good guy, maybe they aren't. That's interesting. You have to, and maybe our human brain naturally does that type of thing. But, in some cases, if you look at some historical wars, history has unearthed that sometimes it was, a false flag attack or whatever. Now with COVID and SARS and all of that, I see zero evidence personally to think that it's anything but what we are being told it is. It's a zoonotic a virus, or at least COVID, that, through mutations, and viruses, especially RNA viruses, mutate a lot. And so mutated so that it can survive in a human host, and that, it happens to have the properties that make it, it's not so lethal that it, and in the early stages, and for many people, they're asymptomatic, and so that's what allows it to spread. But then for certain people, it is scary enough and bad enough and lethal enough that we all have to be very conscientious about, and very scared, not scared, but very thoughtful about how we make sure it doesn't spread and how we don't expose people. So, every now and then through these random mutations, unfortunately, it looks like, something like this shows up, but who knows? But I see no reason for anyone. I would just say, equip yourself with critical thinking skills. Don't believe everything you say on social media. I have family members who forward me all sorts of stuff on social media. And if you just do a simple web search, like 4 out of the 5 things you can outright just see they're false statements. Like, you can just see that they make no sense. So I would encourage you to do your own research and talk to opposing viewpoints. So from Outdoor Bee channel on YouTube, Sal, sir, what are your plans for the future of Khan Academy? That is a big question, Outdoor Bee. So many of y'all know our mission as a not-for-profit is free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. There's 3 parts of that vision. One is that a learner anywhere in the world should have access to world-class learning as early as pre-K, all the way through elementary, middle, high school, and college, across subjects and grades in all of the world's major languages. So that's a big statement. And we're on that journey. The second pillar is they should be able to learn that material in an engaging way that's personalized to their needs. And it should not be bound by time and space. I've talked a lot about mastery learning, and that one of the main issues is that kids keep moving ahead, but they accumulate a gap. They get an 80% on one test, a 70% on another test. And then all of a sudden they're in an algebra class and nothing makes sense because they didn't learn decimals well in 5th grade or negative numbers well in 6th grade. And so mastery learning, personalization helps address that. And then the third pillar of Khan Academy is that I hope that one day Khan Academy can be used as evidence of what you have mastered. You could almost view it as something of a credential. And, we had Jim Nondorf as a guest on this live stream, the head of admissions from University of Chicago. And he said, he would love students to submit what they've mastered on Khan Academy as evidence of not only their academic mastery of content, but also to show the admissions officers that they have real determination and agency over their learning, and they really can learn something at their own time and pace. So there's that whole credentialing piece that I also hope is the future of Khan Academy. And I hope, if we go 5, 10, 20 years in the future, Khan Academy is serving, we have 107 million registered users today. I'm hoping that we're serving billions of learners across subjects and grades in all of the world's major languages. And they can point to Khan Academy as a major reason why they have become empowered people in the world who, for the most part, don't believe in conspiracy theories. that's all right. From YouTube, Aiden Kadami Kermansha asks, how would you revolutionize studying and school criteria? So if I'm understanding this question correctly, what I would focus on, right now, traditional schools, you kind of go through a process, you take a test, and whatever score you get on the test, that is what it is. I mean, if it's bad enough, you might fail, but then you kind of move on to the next thing. That's kind of a time-based credentialing model. I'm a proponent, and I've advocated, and I continue to advocate, and it goes into the last question of what I would call a competency-based model, where there's some way, maybe an assessment, could be a paper-based assessment, online assessment, in-person assessment, or some combination. It could be a practical assessment where you have to do something, where if you can do it, you get a certain cut score, you get a certain score, your algebra, chemistry, data science, whatever it might be, and then you have the decision of the path of how to get there. You can do it at your own time and pace. You could use Khan Academy. It could be Khan Academy in conjunction with a MOOC. It could be an in-class experience. It could be using a textbook. It could be your best friend tutoring you. What matters is that you get to that endpoint. And as soon as you get to that competency-based model, then a lot of things change. One, I think the credentials become more powerful because people know that you learned the material. But then I think it clarifies what's the role of the learning experience. how do you make sure that you're getting to that very well-defined outcome that matters? So that would be, I would say, the main one. I would say, there's other structures. Learning should not be bound by time or space. We've talked about this for many years, and obviously COVID is making this a necessity. Learning should not be bound by time and space. Students should be able to learn at their own time and in a personalized way. Teachers should be empowered with data so they can know what interventions are going to be most valuable for their students. And class time or in-person human time, whether it's in a classroom or whether it's on video conferencing, should be as interactive and as active as possible. It should not just be someone lecturing or just talking. It should be students working together on interesting things and pushing each other and answering each other's questions and being able to talk to each other versus, to kind of sit there silently and not say anything. They should either be doing problems on their own or working with others and collaborating, including the teacher. So from Facebook, Eunice Bay, name one teacher who had an impact of you. I'm very curious. From Kashmir. Okay, that's great. From Kashmir. It's what is it? It's like the middle of the night in Kashmir right now. So Eunice, I can name many teachers. I remember, if you go all the way back, I had Miss Roberts in kindergarten, Miss Lunda in first grade, Miss Darby in second grade. And, they were really important because, you're young, but they were the first people that I think I got positive feedback. I remember, they kind of said, "Hey, Sal, I'm impressed how you're doing this." And it might've been like how I colored something, but the fact that I remember it shows that it really helped with kind of my self-esteem. And then as you get into kind of third and fourth grade, there was Miss Krause and Miss Roussel. And this was kind of an enrichment program where I remember the first time that I went, and this was in a, standard public school, Metairie, Louisiana, which is, not a wealthy part of the country for sure. And Louisiana is not a wealthy state. But I remember the first time I went into this enrichment and I think it was Miss Roussel asked, "So Sal, what are you interested in?" And I was like 7 or 8 years old. And that was the first time that kind of an adult had genuinely, authentically said, "What are you really interested in?" And when I said that, I really liked puzzles and I really liked art and drawing, her response was, "Then we will do puzzles and drawing." And that blew me away. Like, she asked me, I told her, and then I'm just going to get to do more of that. And I remember in second, third, fourth grade, I would kind of, it was this enrichment program where I got to play, I'd be doing these deductive reasoning puzzles. Then I get to draw some days. Then I would get to, play or, chess or another game. And I thought I was getting away with something. But in hindsight, and sometimes we would study art or famous artists or try to make art in their style. And this was second grade, third grade, fourth grade. And in hindsight, that's some of my best learning I ever had. Some of the best learning happens when it doesn't even feel like school, so to speak. It feels like you're doing what you have a passion for, but it's very constructive and you're getting better at it. And it was really powerful to have kind of an adult there to encourage that type. And then if you get into fifth grade, Miss Ellis, I remember she ran her American history course, kind of like a college seminar. She would be at the front, she would always be like eating fruit, and she'd be like peeling I have just this memory. I was a fifth grader. She'd be peeling these oranges, and she was very like almost what you would imagine as like, a very elegant, kind of elderly woman at the time. It seemed elderly. I mean, I'm probably her age now, but and she would just ask us these questions like, so we just read that, President so-and-so did this, but would you have done that? And she would make us answer, as fifth graders, like, "No, I think Roosevelt did the wrong thing. We didn't have to expand the government." It's like, "No, but that was important. It's what brought us out of the Depression. Otherwise, you'd have had unemployed." And to be in a fifth grade class, to have those types of conversations, as you can tell, I remembered it, and it impacted me. And then as you go into middle school, I remember Miss North, actually very similar to Miss Roussel and how she ran her classes, and actually very similar to Miss Ellis. I still remember one of her classes. It was an English class. But, we spent the whole hour talking about reality, like what is real and how do you know it's real? That's mind-blowing. It's still a mind-blowing conversation. And then as you go into high school, there was Mr. Hernandez, who I was very close to. He was kind of a sponsor for our math team, for our academic games team, which I was, stereotypically very involved in, probably not a surprise to y'all. But he was someone who really acted as a mentor, who pushed me, when I was thinking about applying to college, he encouraged me to think very big and to think, he's like, Sal, you could, don't like put blinders on. Don't just try to do what other people are doing. You can, you should think big about your future. And also Miss Kennedy, who was our journalism teacher. And I was the art editor of our school newspaper. And she, once again, just another, I think if there's a common theme here, these are adults who are really amazing teachers who I felt, didn't just see me as another face in the class. They got to know me. They took the time to advise me. They treated me as, they didn't talk down. They treated me as I wouldn't say an equal, but someone, a mentor-mentee type relationship, which, really sticks with you. And actually, I'd be remiss, when I was in high school, I started taking classes at the University of New Orleans when I was about 14 or 15. I was taking these fancy math classes. I started taking like multivariable and partial differential equations and all this kind of stuff. And there was a teacher, he was actually my partial differential equations teacher at University of New Orleans. His name was Dr. Santania. And I think there was some work that we needed to do on a computer. And like, when he found out that my family, we had like no money. My mom was a cashier at a convenience store making minimum wage. And then we later had like a failing convenience store. We had no computer for sure. Or he kind of said, look, you've kind of got a knack for this type of stuff. You should have access to a computer. And so he kind of pulled all sorts of strings for me to have access, the same access the engineering students at the university had to the computers. And that was the first time that I got to really program computers and realize how much I enjoyed it. And that, obviously led to me becoming a computer science and math major. So, I think I'm sure I'm missing a lot of teachers, but those are the ones. You asked the question, so I give you a very as thorough of an answer as I could for that. And I just noticed that I'm all out of time. These were good questions. We started slow on the questions, but it definitely picked up. And now there's a ton of questions. I think next time, if we start slow, I'll just get back to some of these questions that I have right here. But I really appreciate all the questions. And tomorrow, we're going to have Jacqueline Fuller, who is the president of Google.org, which is the arm of Google that is philanthropic and doing what it can. And, I would say Google generally is, trying to do what it can to, I guess, organize the world's information or knowledge. But Google.org is very much interested in things in kind of the not-for-profit philanthropic sector. And actually, they've been big funders of ours. But I'm eager to talk to Jacqueline, who I consider a good friend, on, what's on their plate because of COVID and everything else in the world, and how, we can collectively help address those issues. So I look forward to seeing all of y'all tomorrow.